The world stage is packed with significant events unfolding daily. But today, we are zeroing in on a seismic shift occurring within the United States, impacting potentially millions of lives. Locked doors, border checkpoints, police vested with the authority to deport. No, this scene isn't set in a distant, authoritarian country. It represents the evolving landscape of immigration enforcement emerging in specific regions of the United States. It is the new reality, the changing face of immigration in parts of America, and it's crucial we understand what is happening. We will delve into the specifics, state by state, and explore the implications, but stick around until the end, where we will synthesize these developments and offer some concluding thoughts. Why are certain states advancing further than ever before in their efforts to regulate and restrict undocumented immigrants? The velocity of these changes is startling. In 2025, the regulations are shifting rapidly. Are these measures fundamentally about enhancing security, or are they driven more by political agendas and calculations? What consequences arise when educational institutions begin refusing entry to children based on their documentation status, or when healthcare facilities demand proof of immigration status before providing treatment? These aren't just abstract legal debates. They have profound, real-world effects on individuals and communities. The stakes are incredibly high, touching upon fundamental aspects of life, liberty, and the pursuit of opportunity. As we examine these developments, consider the human element behind the headlines. Before we proceed deeper into this analysis, if you find this information vital and wish to stay informed on complex issues like this, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and hit the like button. Your support is incredibly important for us to continue bringing you in-depth content and helps tremendously in reaching a wider audience. Also, let us know in the comments where you are tuning in from. We love hearing from our viewers around the globe. Now, let's look at the first state on our list, a place often at the epicenter of immigration debates. Please watch through to the end, as we will be drawing important conclusions from these state-by-state analyses. Number 10. Texas. This state is more than just a geographical location. It's a focal point where the border is not merely a line on a map, but a contested battleground. In 2025, Texas is capturing national attention for proactively shaping immigration law within its jurisdiction. The state legislature has enacted Senate Bill 4, a far-reaching piece of legislation that empowers local law enforcement officers to arrest and potentially deport migrants suspected of having entered the country without authorization. You might be taken aback by the extent of this law's reach. It effectively criminalizes the mere presence of individuals without proper documentation within the state. Yes, simply being in Texas without papers becomes a punishable offense under this new framework. However, the story doesn't conclude there. With an extensive border stretching over 1,200 miles adjacent to Mexico, Texas is independently financing and constructing new segments of border wall. This raises significant questions. Are we witnessing the emergence of a state-operated immigration enforcement apparatus? Could this represent a new model of state-level control that challenges or even rivals federal jurisdiction over immigration matters? The Lone Star State has transformed its boundaries into legal fault lines, creating a complex and potentially volatile situation. Could Texas's actions serve as a precursor for policies in other states? Or is Texas charting its own distinct course, rewriting its own set of rules? Regardless of the path forward, the nation is observing Texas with intense scrutiny, understanding that the developments here could have far-reaching implications. Number 9. Florida. In many places, lacking proof of citizenship might lead to complications or inconvenience. However, in this particular state, under the laws taking effect in 2025, it could fundamentally alter the course of an individual's life. Florida has significantly tightened its regulations in ways that are causing unease even among long-established residents. Hospitals are now mandated to inquire about a patient's immigration status prior to admission. Employers face stringent requirements. They must utilize the E-Verify system to check the work eligibility of new hires or face substantial financial penalties. Furthermore, if an undocumented individual is found driving, even if they possess a driver's license issued by another state, that license is considered invalid within Florida under the new provisions. But perhaps the most striking aspect is the expansion of local law enforcement powers. Police officers in Florida can now detain anyone they suspect of being in the country illegally, irrespective of whether another crime has been committed. This action can be taken without the involvement or request of federal immigration agencies. Thousands have reportedly already left the state, fearful of what a routine traffic stop or any interaction with authorities might now entail. Is this policy a matter of enforcement, or does it cultivate an environment of fear? As these policies intensify, many observers are questioning if this represents the future trajectory of immigration law across the United States, beginning with Florida's bold initiatives. Number 8. Oklahoma. This state, situated deep within America's heartland, possesses no international border and no coastline. Its landscape is defined by expansive prairies and interconnected highways. Yet Oklahoma is enacting immigration laws that are causing surprise and raising eyebrows nationwide. In 2025, Oklahoma stunned many observers by passing legislation that goes further than laws in many states located directly on the U.S.-Mexico border. Oklahoma has designated it a state crime to reside within its borders without possessing legal immigration status. You might find this shocking. The simple act of existing within the state without proper documentation could now result in imprisonment. The implications become even more severe under House Bill 4156. According to this law, any individual lacking lawful presence who is arrested for any reason whatsoever can face additional criminal charges based solely on their immigration status. After completing any sentence related to the initial arrest, they are mandated to leave Oklahoma within 72 hours. Refusal to leave or failure to comply within the stipulated time frame could lead to further jail time. Critically, these actions are initiated and executed entirely at the state level, with no requirement for involvement or direction from federal immigration agencies like ICE. This represents state-led immigration enforcement in its most direct and unmediated form. If you are thinking this legislation is merely symbolic or for show, consider this. Local authorities are already formulating implementation strategies. County jails are modifying their procedures. Community organizations are expressing alarm, and even county sheriffs have acknowledged that this fundamentally alters their policing approach. Suddenly, a minor traffic infraction could trigger deportation proceedings, bypassing federal channels entirely. But guess what? This controversial move isn't proceeding without resistance. Legal challenges are already underway, with civil rights organizations arguing that the law infringes upon federal authority and constitutional protections. Oklahoma's official response contends that the state is merely safeguarding its residents and addressing perceived gaps where federal enforcement falls short. Why enact such measures here, in a state far from the border? Why now? Many analysts suggest it's driven by political momentum, with Oklahoma joining several other Republican-led states in reshaping local immigration policy to align with national debates. However, critics argue the human cost, growing fear, fractured families, and heightened tension between communities and law enforcement might be excessively high. Oklahoma's immigrant population is relatively small, constituting less than 6% of the total state population. Despite this, the new law ranks among the strictest in the entire nation. Could Oklahoma's actions serve as a blueprint for other interior states, or will legal pushback halt its implementation? Regardless of the outcome, the developments in Oklahoma are no longer a peripheral issue. They represent a significant new front in the national immigration discourse. Number 7. Tennessee. Imagine this scenario. One moment, a child is preparing for their school day. The next, they are denied entry at the schoolhouse door. This denial isn't based on academic performance or behavior issues, but solely because they cannot provide documentation proving legal U.S. residency. This isn't a historical anecdote. It is a potential reality in 2025 in Tennessee. This state is testing the boundaries of a long-held principle in American education. You would be stunned at how far this new legislation extends. Lawmakers recently passed a bill granting public schools the authority to refuse enrollment to students unable to demonstrate lawful presence. In a nation where access to education was historically viewed as a right for all children residing within its borders, Tennessee's actions directly challenge this fundamental premise. The ripple effects of such policies are potentially massive and deeply concerning. But the implications don't stop at the school gates. School officials might also be permitted to charge tuition to the children of undocumented parents. For numerous families, particularly those engaged in low-wage employment, this effectively means education ceases to be a guaranteed component of their children's future prospects. The underlying message seems unambiguous. If you cannot legally prove your right to be here, do not anticipate receiving the same rights and services, including public education for your children. You might wonder how this situation arose. It connects back to ongoing discussions surrounding Plyler versus Doe, the landmark 1982 Supreme Court decision affirming that states must provide education to all children, regardless of their immigration status. Tennessee's new law represents an open challenge to this precedent. While the law hasn't gone uncontested, civil rights advocates are actively fighting it, arguing it violates established legal principles. It signifies a dramatic shift in how Tennessee defines access to public education. But guess what? The impact extends beyond schools. Tennessee has also broadened its state-level enforcement collaborations with federal immigration agencies, streamlining deportation procedures and utilizing local jails to hold individuals for ICE pickup. In counties such as Davidson and Rutherford, this coordination has reportedly doubled within the past year. And here's something many might not realize. Tennessee has experienced a rapid growth in its immigrant population, especially in urban centers like Nashville and Memphis. These communities are integral to the state's economy. However, instead of fostering integration, this legislation is instilling fear within classrooms and households. What occurs when children cease attending school, not due to lack of desire to learn, but because their families live in fear? What kind of future does this cultivate? These are the pressing questions Tennessee is confronting right now, and the answers will undoubtedly resonate far beyond the state's borders. Number 6. Georgia. Picture bustling airports, towering city skylines, and thriving industries. This is the image of modern Georgia. Yet beneath this veneer of progress, this southern state is reinforcing its grip on immigration in ways that have captured national attention. Georgia has enacted bold and controversial measures in 2025 to enforce immigration laws with a severity that is unsettling communities and even causing divisions among local officials. You might be shocked at how deeply these laws penetrate daily life. Under House Bill 87, a piece of legislation often compared to Arizona's notorious SB 1070, police officers are empowered to investigate an individual's immigration status during routine stops if there's reasonable suspicion. This implies that a minor infraction, like a broken taillight, could potentially lead to detention and immigration proceedings. For some residents, everyday tasks now carry the weight of potential deportation, and the reach extends beyond law enforcement interactions. Employers face severe penalties for hiring undocumented workers, with mandatory e-verified checks for nearly all businesses employing 10 or more individuals. State audits of businesses are intensifying this year. Penalties for violations can include the loss of business licenses, effectively shutting down operations entirely. But guess what? This is merely scratching the surface. Local jails are mandated to verify the immigration status of every person booked. In counties like Gwinnett and Cobb, collaboration with federal immigration agencies has surged, leading to a significant increase in deportation numbers. This enforcement push is creating a chilling effect, impacting even immigrants who are legally present in the state. And here's a detail that might surprise you. Georgia is home to over 1 million immigrants, with more than 400,000 estimated to be undocumented. In cities like Atlanta, these individuals form the backbone of vital industries, from construction to hospitality. However, many are now packing their belongings and leaving due to fear. Schools are observing declining enrollment numbers, and health clinics report a drop in immigrant patient visits. Why does this matter? Because fear is fundamentally altering how people live and interact within the state. It's not just about legality anymore. It's about daily survival. What happens when individuals are too afraid to contact the police, report abuse, or even show up for work? Georgia is pushing the limits of state-level enforcement, and whether this becomes a national template or serves as a cautionary tale remains to be seen. Number 5. Alabama. What if simply being visible in public could place you in jeopardy? In 2025, one state has woven the concept of immigration enforcement into the very fabric of everyday existence. Alabama's HB 56 continues to generate significant repercussions years after its initial introduction, and now it has been revitalized and strengthened with new enforcement capabilities. Under these regulations, law enforcement officers are required to check the immigration status of any individual during a lawful stop if there is reasonable suspicion that the person might be undocumented. But guess what? This is just the beginning. The law extends even further, criminalizing actions such as giving an undocumented immigrant a ride, renting them housing, or even hiring them for day labor. Yes, you understood correctly. Everyday actions, seemingly ordinary elsewhere, are classified as criminal offenses here. But here is something you might not anticipate. Alabama possesses some of the nation's most stringent immigration-related education laws. Schools are obligated to gather data on the immigration status of every enrolling student, while students cannot legally be turned away based on this status, yet. Advocates argue the law's clear intention is to deter undocumented families from accessing public education altogether. The impact is palpable. Following the law's initial implementation, thousands of students seemingly vanished from classrooms within weeks. Businesses experienced sudden workforce depletion overnight. In rural areas, agricultural crops reportedly rotted unharvested in the fields. Now, in 2025, with renewed enforcement efforts, Alabama is intensifying its stance, despite the evident economic consequences. And don't assume these policies operate discreetly. Alabama's state government has issued public statements championing its zero-tolerance strategy. In certain counties, immigration checkpoints have reappeared. Residents report avoiding entire towns out of fear. But here's the twist. Despite these severe laws, Alabama has one of the smallest immigrant populations in the country, with less than 4.5% of residents being foreign-born. So why the extreme measures? Many observers believe it's largely symbolic, a method for the state to assert its position and convey a message. However, for individuals living under the shadow of these laws, symbolism translates into a daily struggle for survival. What happens when fear becomes an intrinsic part of everyday life? When neighbors cease interacting with each other? Alabama is grappling with these questions right now, and the answers are proving to be more unsettling than one might expect. Number 4. Arizona. Flashbacks to roadside checkpoints, sheriff's deputies interrogating passengers, intense protests outside courthouses. This isn't just a memory from the past. It's becoming reality once again in Arizona. A state previously at the heart of America's most contentious immigration disputes is reigniting the fire. And now, in 2025, it's intensifying its efforts once more. You might be shocked by the extent of the revived measures. Arizona has recently reintroduced legislation empowering law enforcement to stop and question individuals about their immigration status during routine encounters, a policy reminiscent of the infamous SB 1070. But guess what? This iteration is arguably even broader. Officers can now detain anyone suspected of being unlawfully present, even if no other crime has been committed. Critics are sounding the alarm, warning that this paves the way for racial profiling and unjust detentions. Supporters, however, claim it's essential for restoring law and order. Either way, the atmosphere on the streets of cities like Phoenix and Tucson feels distinctly different. In rural regions near the border, many residents are living in a perpetual state of heightened vigilance. The impact doesn't stop there. Arizona has expanded employer audits, doubled down on e-verify mandates, and implemented new identification laws requiring state-issued proof of residency for almost every public service. Access to things like housing assistance, unemployment benefits, and even certain types of medical aid is now contingent on documentation. Here's something that might surprise you. Stories are emerging from citizens and legal residents who report being questioned or detained based on their appearance or the language they speak. It's a chilling echo of the tensions from the 2010s, and it's happening again. Is Arizona simply reverting to its previous strategies, or is it rewriting its approach for a new era? Whatever the case, it's evident that in 2025, Immigration enforcement in the Grand Canyon state is no longer confined to the border region. It's about defining who belongs and who does not, and the implications are far-reaching. The state's housing industry, once thriving, is experiencing delays due to a lack of skilled labor. Construction companies, farms, and restaurants are reporting critical labor shortages. And despite the state's undocumented population shrinking over recent years, enforcement is now stricter than ever, creating tangible economic consequences. Number 3. Iowa. Think of rolling farmland, peaceful small towns, a state perhaps not immediately associated with leading the charge on immigration crackdowns. Yet, in 2025, Iowa is doing precisely that, catching many observers off guard. You might assume immigration enforcement is primarily a concern for border states, but Iowa has demonstrated otherwise. This year, the state enacted Senate File 2340, a law establishing it as a state crime to be present within Iowa without lawful immigration status. That's correct. Individuals can be arrested, jailed, and ordered to leave the state, all initiated at the state level without waiting for federal intervention. You might be shocked to learn how rapidly this is being enforced. Since the law took effect, counties throughout Iowa have reported a significant increase in detentions, particularly in areas with substantial agricultural workforces. In towns like Storm Lake and Marshalltown, which heavily rely on immigrant labor, fear is spreading faster than ever. But there's more. Under this new legislation, anyone convicted of these immigration-related charges faces automatic expulsion from Iowa. They are given mere days, not weeks, to depart or risk rearrest. And what about local law enforcement? They are now collaborating more closely with ICE than previously, despite ongoing federal lawsuits arguing that the Iowa law oversteps constitutional boundaries and infringes on federal authority. Here is something many people do not realize. Iowa has one of the fastest-growing immigrant populations in the Midwest. These communities are vital to the state's economy, supporting meatpacking plants, factories, and farms, some of Iowa's largest economic engines. Yet now, some companies are quietly bracing for the impact, uncertain how long they can operate without this essential labor force. Even citizens are experiencing the ripple effects. Schools are observing sudden drops in attendance. Health clinics are reporting fewer visits from immigrant patients. Religious groups have begun organizing underground support networks for families now too fearful to venture outside. Why is a state with no international border implementing such stringent measures? Many speculate it's driven by political considerations, reflecting national trends. Others attribute it to rising fear and anti-immigrant sentiment. But one thing is undeniable. Iowa is no longer on the sidelines of the immigration debate. It's actively shaping it, and the consequences are profoundly affecting lives and communities across the state. Number 2. Louisiana. Think of vibrant culture, delicious gumbo, soulful jazz, and picturesque bayous, not necessarily immigration checkpoints and detention facilities. However, in 2025, Louisiana has taken a sharp turn, enacting policies that are causing significant concern. This year, lawmakers passed legislation granting local police forces full authority to detain undocumented immigrants without waiting for instructions or requests from ICE. You might be shocked by how quickly this is being implemented. In parishes like Jefferson and Caddo, sheriff's offices are already establishing specialized immigration task units. And guess what? They are utilizing the same databases and technology previously reserved for federal border agents. Community leaders are raising alarms, warning that this approach is fostering division and turning neighbors against each other. Civil rights groups argue vehemently that these policies encourage racial profiling and violate fundamental rights. Even local schools and health clinics are now required to report undocumented individuals who seek public assistance. This means that fear is now accompanying families into hospitals, schools, and even places of worship. For a state celebrated for its deep cultural roots and tradition of hospitality, this new chapter feels colder, harsher, and is fundamentally altering the very character of Louisiana. It's clear that in 2025, Louisiana's approach to immigration is becoming increasingly severe, and the human and social costs are mounting. Number 1. North Carolina. Known for its beautiful beaches, thriving tech hubs, and rich bluegrass traditions, North Carolina is now making headlines for a different reason in 2025, aggressively targeting undocumented immigrants within local communities. The speed and scope of this enforcement push are alarming. Just this year, the state reinstated agreements allowing sheriff's departments to function as de facto immigration enforcers, booking and holding individuals until ICE can intervene. You might be stunned by how many counties, particularly in the Piedmont and eastern regions, have opted back into these agreements. And it doesn't end there. A new law now prohibits sanctuary policies statewide. Local governments that refuse to cooperate with federal immigration detainers risk losing state funding entirely. Critics call it coercion. State officials label it essential for preserving public safety. But guess what? The fear generated by these policies is tangible and widespread. Families are reportedly withdrawing children from schools. Drivers are skipping work for fear of traffic stops. Entire communities, many with residents who have lived there for years, are retreating into the shadows. North Carolina has fundamentally changed the rules of engagement regarding immigration within its borders. 10 states, 10 distinct approaches to crack down, but the underlying message resonates: conform or face consequences. From the South to the Midwest, even in states far removed from any international border, America is reshaping its handling of immigration, one stringent law at a time. If you have watched this far, you are not merely observing. You are paying close attention, and that engagement is crucial. Like this video to help disseminate this important information. Subscribe to stay updated on our in-depth explorations of these critical issues, and share this content with someone who needs to understand the reality behind the headlines. Because these laws are not just news items, they are actively altering lives. The more informed you are, the greater your capacity to advocate for change and make a difference. Stay tuned for more analysis.